Okay, so this was a short road relatively near where I live, and in fact it's where we want to build a house for ourselves in the future. There's a road called Granite Ridge. It's in Asheboro, North Carolina. We put this in 10, 11 years ago, something like that, and it occasionally gets damage from storms and whatnot. In some of the steeper areas it's just a gravel road. You can see some of the ruts as we move along here. This is just a walk up the road. Starting from the cul-de-sac end, the road is about 1/4 of a mile long. I was just getting ready to start the day. These are those little things on the side there are some diversions that I had created to try and shunt the water off to the side. They actually work quite well, but even so, they need maintenance from time to time. And on this would be the northeast side of the road, starting to get some ruts there as well. The road itself has tended to widen a little bit as the gravel's pushed to the side, so I end up having to try and pull it back in. This will actually be the first time that we've put down new gravel since the road was installed. That's actually pretty good. At the moment there's only 2 other people living off of the road. Right here I sped it up. Now right here where that driveway we just passed on the left, we'll get a runoff from that driveway that crosses the road and then starts to, we end up with too much water on the northeast side, or this would be essentially the east side of the road, which starts to erode it going on. So I'm gonna try and create a bit of a berm, a crown in the middle of the road with the gravel this time around, and we'll see what we get. Actually, I'm recording this about 2 months later, and we're recording the sound about 2 months later, and we've had quite a few, well, not too many, but some heavy storms come through, including the remnants of Hurricane Ian, where we got about 4 inches of rain, and the repairs that I made, and you'll see in this video, have actually held up pretty well. This area I'm walking through right here is a kind of a low spot, and it has tended to widen over time. So what I'm going to have, we're just getting 2 loads of gravel. What I'm going to have them do is run it down the middle as much as possible, and we'll try and let the grass come back in on the sides to some extent. I'd love to have this paved someday. That's quite a chunk of change to get that done, but I think that in the long run would be more beneficial and certainly much less dusty. As you'll see, the day that I was doing this was drier and quite dusty. I actually ended up digging out a dust mask and wearing that when it was dumping the gravel, because I think otherwise I might have died. And even inside my skid steer, here's some more. This is more towards the entrance. You can see how big the rut is, just some point of reference with my foot. And I turned around from there. There really wasn't much damage at the entrance, just might have needed a little bit more gravel, and we did put some up there. Here again, some bit of, so you can get some scale with my foot in the rut. I was starting to say, though, that even within the skid steer, even though it's enclosed, there's some gaps here and there, and it would get somewhat dusty inside there, so I just kept the mask on. And that seemed to help, so it ended up filling my lungs with gravel dust. I won't make too many comments as we move along. You can just enjoy some music. Some pretty good sized ruts that had developed some gullies, washouts. I'm not sure the proper terminology for this. I let it go a little too long, primarily because my skid steer broke. Just got it fixed. In fact, I actually just got the bill for that. Cost me about $3,500 to get it all fixed. So here I'm using a land leveler. This one's from Skid Pro. I've used it quite a bit. It actually works well. It has some scarifiers on the bottom that I've used when I'm in, like, putting in a road. I can put those down and take out, it'll bump up rocks, like little rocks, and take out roots and things like that. Clean them up. And the leveler itself works pretty well. Now, something still busted on my skid steer, and it's never actually worked, is the float function. So when you're using something like this or trying to smooth, you're supposed to be able to let the implement just float along with gravity, so just the weight of the implement. Mine won't do that, so it's essentially locked in place, which makes it significantly more challenging. From what I understand, I've never had a skid steer. This is my first one, so I've never experienced having one that actually works as far as that's concerned. But I can see where that would be significantly helpful. And it's something that's on my wish list to get fixed somewhere along the way. This works pretty well, though. I can move actually quite a bit of the gravel with it. Gravel piles up within the land leveler, and then as you move over gaps, it drops into the holes, so it helps to level things out. You'll be able to see that better as we move along here as well. And then I can also use it by angling it to pull gravel into the center. So here I'm using it to pull some of the gravel into the center, trying to recreate a bit of a crown in the road, at least to improve it. I'm using the land leveler to repair some of those water diversions. A couple of rules of thumb that I've learned about dealing with water and trying to prevent it from damaging things is to spread it out and slow it down. So if you can reduce the volume and then slow down the speed of it, you'll end up with less erosion and less damage. These diversions will capture some of the water as it flows down along the side of the road and then shunt it out into the gully where it's supposed to be. So it's essentially spreading it out and then putting it into an area where there's already some erosion control from the growth that's there. If it just flows along the side of the road, it picks up speed, picks up volume, and you saw the gullies already, or the little that the water created as it moved along. And here what I'm doing is driving on top of the soil that I've piled up just to tamp it down a bit. I'm trying to create a little bit better of a dam so that it doesn't just completely flow away. It ends up getting messed up a bit, but you kind of do the best you can do. And it does seem to help, it seems to work. Then you have to come back and maintain it a little bit, do it again. so here we've moved down to the middle of the road. I did some work in between, but it's just not that interesting. So working on the gullies that had formed along the sides. And then again, I'll be working on pulling some of the gravel towards the middle to some extent. Alright, so here we're moving towards the entrance. Just to the right, or to the west of where this location is the entrance off of Lassiter Mill Road, which is where this road's created from. It's kind of fun, actually. When we purchased this property, it was just 50 acres or almost 50 acres of woods. And stomping through the woods, trying to figure out where to put a road, and then to finally make it happen. It's kind of fun. It's enjoyable. I like thinking about those types of things and then making it happen. Of course, we didn't put in the road ourselves. This was more than what a skid steer can handle, and I didn't have one back then. This had a full loader and graders and the whole bed, so maintaining it, you can do that with a skid steer. Putting it in, actually I'm doing it for my driveway, and you can do it. It just takes quite a bit of effort. I do find it fun though. This type of work just takes quite a bit of back and forth and smoothing it out and dragging gravel from here to there, and it's kind of an ongoing process. So here comes the gravel. Received only 2 loads. I think they were 19 tons each. I think I was trying to chase him up the driveway, or up the road. Didn't succeed. But you can see where he dropped a bunch of gravel here right at that entrance of that driveway that comes in, trying to create a berm. And here we're back in that spot. So he had already dumped some, and I'm asking him to put more down because I'm trying to really create a crown there, so that any water that comes off will be diverted back into the ditches on the south side of the road, as opposed to running across the road and then picking up volume and speed heading down that side where it tends to collect on the road itself and erode it. It's a little hard to control how much gravel goes down where. This guy was pretty good. He's been doing it for a long time and did a pretty good job of it. It got away from him once where we dumped more in one spot than we wanted to, but that's okay. You can move it around. And basically what I did was he would drop some of the gravel, and then I would go along and I would smooth it out and place it exactly where I wanted it before he came back with the second load. And then it took me I was pretty much done moving it around by the time he left with the second load, or at least pretty close to it. So he can control the depth by how fast he drives, and he just the gate on the dump truck is locked open just maybe about 4 inches, something like that, if I had to guess. Not exactly sure why I decided to record myself walking all the way back there. Here I was trying to move some of the gravel or pull in more from the sides, get a little more aggressive using the 4-in-1 bucket, and I kind of pretty much just ended up just messing things up a bit and then ended up giving up with the 4-in-1 bucket and smoothing things out. You'll see as we move along. It did help to some extent, but the nice smooth layer that he put down, it definitely messed that up and took a bit to smooth it out again. So I think here in a minute I get rid of the 4-in-1 bucket, and then I go back and get the land leveler. Yep, here I go, getting rid of the bucket, and I'll take off and get the land leveler to smooth out the mess I made. I think it would have worked better if the float function worked on my skid steer, but it just going up and down, it's locked in place. You end up digging in and digging out, and it just makes it really hard to smooth. You can still do it, especially driving backwards, but without the float function it was not working the best. The land leveler at least lets me do it fairly decently, as long as I'm on a fairly level or fairly flat surface, I should say. If it's not on a flat surface, without the float function, I still was struggling. And the second load of gravel has arrived. And I was mistaken right at the beginning where I indicated 2 loads. We actually got 3. So it was just shy of 60 tons of what would they call around here anyway, ABC stone or crush and run. It's crushed rock, so you end up with a lot of dust. In that dust, with rain and with a little bit of time and a little bit of traffic, sets up to a pretty solid surface, but it does create for a dusty surface whenever it's dry. Thing does a pretty good job dumping the gravel. We got it a little bit too thick there, so I end up having to come back and move it around a little, but not too bad. Probably could have just left it there. Had we been getting a third load, I would have just left it there and had him continue on up the street. Here's another view. I was walking along there with my handheld camera. This is the camera on the tripod. So when he goes, he has to... The weight of the gravel is what kicks open the door. He basically has a chain on it that holds it open to a certain dimension, that 4 or 5 inch gap or so. And then the weight, when it falls on the door, pops it open. And then again, his speed driving is what controls the depth of the gravel that he's dropping. You can see all the dust and why I was wearing a dust mask. And here I'm just shaping it again, trying to make sure we get that crown. And pushing a little bit of the gravel up the hill, because I wanted more of it up the hill a little bit. this is the beginning of the third load. We're up here at the cul-de-sac now. If you remember, there was a pretty steep gully or washout on that south side of the road, so he's giving me a little bit more gravel to work with here. Trying to preserve a significant part of the load for the last thing, which was, and I don't have a picture of this, but he dumps it up at the entrance. The entrance right off of Lassiter Mill is what gets most of the traffic, and it had been ground down to quite a bit of dust as opposed to gravel, so I wanted to refresh it a bit. gives me just a little bit more. We took a peek in the truck and decided that there was enough to leave me just a little pile here to work with. And then he would put the rest up at the entrance and then head on out. I think I'd already paid him when he came up the hill in between shots there. So he's heading on up the hill. He dumped it there at the entrance, and now I'm gonna spend quite a bit of time massaging the amount. He dropped a little lower on the cul-de-sac than I wanted, so I ended up basically pushing it up the hill. really not intended to move a lot of stuff. You can kind of push it along, but trying to move quantity up the hill just wasn't working, so I switched to the bucket. And it just doesn't smooth very well. So I switched to the bucket, moved some up the hill, and then back to the leveler to finish off. after this, I pretty much did it. Went up to the entrance and poked around at the gravel that he put down there a little bit, but didn't need to do much. Took me about 3/4 of a day to do all of that, so a bit of time. Now here's about a week later. We'd had just a light rain of some kind, and walking it now post fixing the road, just as the colors are starting to turn. Road looks pretty good now. And heading back the other way from the cul-de-sac end, actually standing up on what's hopefully going to be my driveway that I've been slowly pushing in. So walking back west-ish. Here you can see a little better all that gravel work done where there used to be a pretty good washout on the south side there on the left. All fixed now. And the entrance, which you really haven't seen before in this video, right up here at Lassiter Mill Road, and that's where Granite Ridge tees into. Very pretty country. I love it out here. Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.